Welcome to the 7th episode of Vies to Mall 2010 Recaps from Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Harmstone, and joining me as always is a Canadian who did say last episode that we wouldn't go 4 weeks without recording, and didn't lie because it's almost 6, Logan Saunders.
Good morning.
Good morning, Canada.
Wake up, Canada. Wake up.
How has your last month and a half been?
It's had some ups and downs.
You got to see my smiley face a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that's true. Was it just 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago yesterday I came home. So you would have landed home 2 weeks today.
Yeah, well, where was I last when we last recorded a podcast?
Oh God, you were somewhere in Eastern Europe. It was about the 26th of May, I think it was, something like that.
26th of May. So it would have been in Georgia, Armenia we recorded one.
So yeah, where in the world is Logan Saunders? Let's begin with that.
I'm back home in Vernon. I've been back home for, I guess if we had hung out 2 weeks ago, I guess just under, what's today, Tuesday? I think 2 weeks. 2 weeks as of today I've been back home.
Yeah, I think you were flying from Halifax on the Tuesday.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago I was in Halifax, and then flew back home into Vernon earlier than planned. I know we're dating ourselves a bit with the recording of this podcast, but this is the first podcast we have recorded since Gian passed.
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise when you sent me that message, I'll be perfectly honest.
That was everyone's reaction, really, was... I uploaded the eulogy I did, and then the little discussion.
Which made me cry, you bastard. I have to say, when you sent me the text, it made me cry. I told you weren't allowed to make me cry.
Sorry about that. So we uploaded the eulogy and the round table we had of everyone sharing stories about Gian afterwards, and even that funeral was on Sunday the 26th?
Yes.
Yeah, so was that 9 days ago? So 9 days ago we had Gian's funeral. So what happened with Gian, for those of you who don't know, we were traveling for 6 months straight, and we spent the last 2 weeks in Israel. And we got engaged while we were in Israel. We planned to get married in Indonesia in September. I don't know, when is this podcast supposed to come out, Michael?
I've not decided yet.
Okay, so it's July 5th of 2022 while we're recording this. I know we don't like to do that, but I think we're making an exception here.
Yeah, there's a non-zero chance that this is getting clipped and released separately, so...
Yeah, so... Yeah, we both were flying... Gian was flying back home to the Philippines. She hadn't been back home in over 6 months or so, and was going to look for a job. And I was flying off to Poland and was going to travel around for a couple more weeks before flying back home. And about 48 hours after Gian got home to the Philippines, she finished and she hired a cleaning lady to clean her apartment. Everything seemed normal. She seemed healthy. She had a doctor's appointment booked the next day. She was having heart and chest issues for the past year and a half, roughly. Yeah, about at least a year or so. And she went out to the public market, came back, started eating some food, and then I didn't hear from her for about 24 hours, contacted her sister contacted her other sister, who contacted the landlord. The landlord went into Gian's apartment, and they found her dead in her apartment. The autopsy confirmed she suffered from a fatal episode of cardiac arrest. They transported her to her hometown where they had a 5-day wake for her. I believe she's buried in the same cemetery as her mother. Her mother passed about 7 or 8 years ago. I, of course, had my brother-in-law fly out to Europe, and then, of course, the three of us traveled through London for a couple days. My brother-in-law and I went through Prague for a couple days after I arranged everything while I was in Poland, which will probably be 48 or 72 hours of my life I'll never forget. We had a 1-day layover in Halifax. It was the first time my brother-in-law and I got to travel together. We've been talking about doing some sort of trip for 10 years or so. We wouldn't have been able to do this if this hadn't happened, unfortunately. Arranged my flights, came back to Canada early, arranged Gian's funeral here within Canada. We had the service, as I said, 9 days ago. Yeah, all the visiting friends from out of town are back home, and life life continues.
Yeah. So, from my point of view, it was the 12th of June, I think it was. It was that Sunday.
Yeah, it was 8 p.m. I think it was 8 p.m. Local time in Poland when I found out. So it was fairly early morning in the Philippines on the 13th when they found her. Her time of death was likely on the 12th, I think is what they figure.
So we had arranged to do this episode on the 12th, and you'd sent me a message earlier in the afternoon just going, yeah, just waiting to hear from Jian because I've not heard from her today. And then, yeah, I got a message off you just saying Jian is dead. And my response was, wait, what? What the fuck? And then I pretty much said, let me know if you want me. And then the next day we had a few little calls, and you said, do you mind coming down to London? I cleared it with work, and we had a nice weekend, despite the circumstances.
Yeah, you had a few calls. I had hundreds.
No, we had a few calls between
We
us.
had a few calls. Yeah, you were a few of hundreds of calls I had to do during those couple days.
What do you need? Do you need me? I'll be there. Done.
Yeah, and then your reaction, Michael, just like, what, Jan? What do you mean, Jan? Like, it's in the after we had the eulogy, we filmed everyone's reactions at the funeral, and my cousin Lisa, she shared that when my aunt told her, she said, "Well, Gian, who?" She was going through her mental Rolodex of all the Gians that she knew, and just didn't even consider the possibility it was in reference to me and Gian.
Well, I can't even remember whether we have mentioned it on the podcast this year, but when you were in Thailand, she was having a bit of heart troubles, and you forced her to go with the doctor eventually.
Yeah, she was on medication doing so much better. Like, if she wasn't on medication and this happened, this would be a completely different scenario of, oh, I really, really, really should have pushed really hard to get her into the doctor. But the fact that she was getting properly treated for it, she should have gone in more frequently when we were in Georgia, but it was tough. I mean, it was a huge struggle to get her in to see the doctor, and she had an appointment booked for the following day on the Monday. Like, we knew there could be some episodes, like if we were walking a lot during a day, then she would have issues, but it was 20 times better than it was before. Like, she would have to stop every 5 minutes to catch her breath. Once she got on the medication, she was able to walk the entire length of Patong Beach and back completely fine. We did long tours where she wouldn't have any episodes until like late at night after we had been out doing a tour of Georgia for 10 or 12 hours, right? An organized tour with and this is with inclines and lots of walking. So until we get back, that she'd feel winded. A huge contrast to before, where yeah, it was a flat surface and she's winded after 5 minutes and having to stop for a couple minutes. It's a long story there, but she really, really didn't want to go in to see a doctor. And then the co-creator of my trivia team, he passed away back in April. I think we recorded podcasts talking about that, and that forced Gian to get in, where it was easier to convince Gian to go into emergency. And they're like, your blood pressure is really high. Her numbers were a lot better than it was before. It wasn't fatally high, but yeah, she's been gone for about 3 weeks now, and this is the first podcast we have recorded since her passing. I must say it's a bit weird recording this podcast because for the past, half a year or so of recording, Jan's always like laying down on the bed behind my desk while we're recording the podcast. Or she's always in the room when we're recording too. We have a couple bloopers that we've edited out, I think, over over the past 6 months.
There's definitely one that has been edited out. I can't remember whether the other one was, but the other one was actually pretty funny. But you're going to get video on that, so nobody may ever hear it.
And even during our Masonry's 32 coverage, Gian was there for what, 2 episodes when we were recording Masonry's 32? She was definitely there for the Philippines episode.
Yeah, it's 2 years ago now.
So she would have been there for the finale as well. Almost 2 years, yeah.
This is our 26th episode together this year.
26. So yeah, she's been here probably other than the mole finale, she's been here for all of the recordings. So that was the weird thing, because yesterday I said, okay, I think I'm ready to try a podcast. And it didn't occur to me until this morning of, Jian's always in the room listening to us talk.
Usually you've got to relay something I've said when she sneezes.
Yeah, the sneezing fits, yeah. Or sometimes she'd pipe into the conversation for a minute or so, and that usually gets edited out too. So big change.
I must admit, I was very surprised when he said to me, "Right, I think I'm ready." Yesterday, I'm like, "Are you sure?" It's quite soon.
Yeah, I want to get at least one in and see how it goes, and if it's not fun, maybe it will be even longer for Venom. But it's almost worse right now because I'm not working at all right now. I took the month off, and then I had all my visitors distract me for quite a few days there. Canada Day weekend just happened. There were a lot of activities going on. So yesterday was kind of the first major day of everything, of like just kind of like life goes on in a way. I mean, it is summertime, so some people I know have a bit more free time than usual, but for the most part, it's, everyone's back to work, and yeah, I got to find a way to go about my day. And having this podcast may end up being a good thing, and who knows, maybe we'll go through like 3 or 4 seasons of Vidum over the next couple months. Who knows?
If nothing else, we can pre-record next year's historians if you want to make my life a lot easier.
Yeah, because once I'm start working, or of course, and another question I've been asked all the time is, so are you going to go over to the Philippines just to go to Jian's burial site? And the answer is yes. I just don't know when. So when that happens, we're not going to be recording for a couple weeks or so. Then I'm sure.
No, it's got to. As I said to you when we were chatting about this in London, it's got to be the right time. You can't do it on anyone else's schedule. It's got to be on yours.
Yeah, because I was googling like, wow, how long does it take before somebody goes to the burial site of a spouse, or when somebody loses a child? And guess what? Google doesn't have the answer to that question.
The answer is exactly what I said to you at the time. It depends on the person.
Yeah, everyone's template is going to be different for the path to the grieving process going back to normal. And I've never really had to experience this. I don't know about you, Michael, but the trivia teammate I had was one of the closest people to me who had passed, and that was just a couple months ago, also by a fatal heart attack. And a couple of uncles, but uncles I didn't really see all that often, and a couple cousins who I met a few times, but again, didn't see all that often, didn't keep in close contact with. So to go from that to my fiance passing unexpectedly, which is pretty much the worst case scenario for, I think, anyone. Well, for in terms of like the one person they don't want to lose, it's their soulmate. Yeah, that's so. It's a pretty big jump. So there's as Jeff Probst would say, there's a really steep learning curve to this, and yeah, I'm trying to figure it all out right now, and who knows, maybe this podcast will help. We're on a flavoring 7, if I'm not mistaken.
We are, and I'm getting to that shortly. But I don't know whether you remember in 2014 we had the news about my grandma dying, and that ruined me for weeks. All I can say is it doesn't ever go away, but it does get easier.
Yeah, one thing I've noted for anyone who goes through a traumatic loss like this, then everyone shares all of their traumatic losses. So all I've heard for the past 3 weeks is, oh, this person had passed, that person had passed. Not like they're trying to one up me. I know the intentions are good and all, and the attempt at empathy, but it's just funny, like, oh man, this is a tough loss for me. And then you get hundreds of stories of losses being thrown at you. So it's just a funny little observation I've made over the past couple of weeks.
Well, misery loves company.
Yeah. And now let's talk about our Heinz misery in this episode of Venom.
Yeah, I mean, this episode is pretty brutal for Arjen. I did, when I was originally watching this episode, I went back and tried to rewatch the reunion to see whether they actually say who would have gone home last week. They don't, but there is a brilliant quote from the mole apologizing for their actions in this episode and screwing Arjen over.
Because even after watching this episode and the last episode, you're still it's the same news as Jan passing. What? How did that happen?
It doesn't make sense. I said this to you last time. It doesn't make sense how Arjen goes off the back of being the one person with a green screen last time.
especially given all the other circumstances for the episode with exemptions and all.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, and still 12 years later, it still doesn't make sense how Arjen goes here.
Yeah, 12 years later. That kid is going off to high school and it still doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. And I've made no secret of the fact that Arjen is one of my favourites. He's probably my second favourite of the season after unironic favourite Tim. But it still just doesn't make sense how Arjen goes here.
It's funny because even at the start of this episode, they have a very long recap of Arjen being the only one daring enough to look at his screen while everyone else deducted money from the pot. And then Peter Yan just goes over the blatant distrust within this group of five because it's more so Fritz. Fritz just unleashed a whole lot of hell with everyone doing things to screw each other over.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot at the end of the season, but I can't ever think of a challenge being such a catalyst like Fritz taking that exemption.
Yeah, because they start hiding his suitcase, and everyone just plays way more selfishly from that point forward. And Sana deducted €1,000 from the pot after playing all of her yokers. And everyone's trying to go through that as if what was the rational decision making there?
Which still doesn't make sense 12 years later.
And then I think Erica's the only one who defends her decision, saying, "Well, everyone needs to see Tokyo before they die."
Eric didn't care about anything else, he just wanted to see Tokyo.
Yeah. Well, I can't blame her. Tokyo is like a top 5 city in the world that everyone wants to see. And it's a 5-hour bus ride from Yamagata to Tokyo, and Fritz comments on the crazy driving, and Eric comments on the never ending buildings. As somebody who spent 10 days in Tokyo, the never ending buildings is a very true thing about Tokyo.
It really makes me laugh because I have the note here that is just, as punishment for paying €4,000 from the pot, they have to use a bus ride to Tokyo rather than getting any normal transport.
The thing about Tokyo that's interesting when I was there is you don't really see that many cars on the road because the public transit is so damn good. Because there's 30 or so lines from Shinjuku Station and Shibuya Station, all that's all around you, especially all around the Shibuya crossing. You just see the sign for the line that you need. And the fact that, tens of millions of people go through this Shinjuku Station each day, and it's a massive station, you understand, I can see why the traffic isn't all that bad in Tokyo, because they make it so convenient to use the public transport.
Yeah, especially compared to other major cities in the world.
Well, yeah, take Manila, for example. Over 20 million people, and it can take 4 hours to go a couple kilometers during rush hour, and that is no exaggeration. And that's because their LRT really, really sucks.
Take Amsterdam, it takes 2.5 hours to get through security at the airport at the moment.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, not that I'm still very annoyed.
What's funny is that the Schiphol airport workers told American Airlines, I think it was American Airlines, where they sent them a memo saying, "Please stop selling tickets for flights to Schiphol because we're still in a dire situation. Don't sell any more tickets." So American Airlines listened to them and said, "Okay, we won't sell any more tickets to Schiphol for the rest of the summer."
Yeah, there's a few airlines that have done that with Schiphol because it genuinely was a nightmarish situation. There's no better way to put it. I don't know whether I've mentioned it a few times.
And Sana, when they're driving through Tokyo, she says, "Yeah, it's like a sort of video game." Yeah, I know this is shocking, Sana, but a lot of video games are made around Tokyo, or at least Osaka too. It was sort of a video game. Well, lots of video games use Tokyo as the environment in the game.
Having said that, in probably about 18 months' time, I'll be hopefully going to Universal in Hollywood where they're opening Super Nintendo Land because it looks awesome.
Yeah, I've heard. Actually, Brett and I were talking about Super Nintendo Land too.
I've seen Super Nintendo Land from Universal Studios Japan, and oh my god, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it's got really, really good reviews.
And they're quite close to finishing building Super Nintendo Land, I think, now in Hollywood. So when the hype dies down a little bit, I'll be flying over.
So they get to Tokyo and they get an SMS text to pick one person with a good ear.
Don't forget that Eric gets the text and actually knows how a phone works this time.
Yeah, he doesn't open it upside down.
He's actually learned from his time in Japan of how to use a flip phone, which is amazing for Eric.
And the Sana and Arjen vote Arjen with a good ear. Kim, Eric, and Fritz vote Eric with a good ear. So majority rules. Eric has the good ear, and then we get lots and lots of B-roll of Shibuya Crossing and the various scramble crossings around Shibuya Crossing.
Weirdly, no one picks Fritz.
Fritz is going to get picked on so much this episode.
Could it be because it's a solo role and they're not giving him any power over the game still because they don't trust him?
Yeah, they're thinking, well, if there's an exemption coming up or lots of money, we don't want Fritz in that key role, even though he just saved their ass in the last episode. So there's 4 suitcases. One suitcase has yokers. One has dinner with a fellow candidate of your choice. Third suitcase has a golden question mark, and the fourth suitcase is empty. And if 2 or more people claim the same suitcase, it's out of the game. And Eric is segregated and told about the other group's assignment, and he'll win 2,000 euros for the pot if he knows who has which suitcase. And Eric gets to listen to what they're saying on the walkie-talkies, and Eric, disappointed, says, "Oh, once again, no yokers for me." He keeps getting screwed out of yokers all season.
He does, and it's worth pointing out that the negotiations take place in the middle of Shibuya Crossing, and they have until the lights change to make their trades.
Yes, which, for those of you who haven't been to Shibuya Crossing, it is as chaotic as it seems on TV. Thousands of people crossing simultaneously, and you're just trying to take in all of the stimuli all around you as you're trying to get to where you need to be before the light changes.
There is a very good reason that it is one of the most visited locations in Amazing Race history.
Because there's no scramble crossing like this anywhere else in the world. But yet it's so perfectly orchestrated, and you're just blown away thinking, I just went through a whole lot of chaos, but yet everything went super smoothly.
I do also have to say that this is the sort of challenge which makes Japan a brilliant location for Vidum. You couldn't do this challenge anywhere else, and that's the sort of challenge we really advocate for on this podcast, is stuff that is just so intertwined with the location of the season.
So Arjen runs up to Kim, and Arjen picks out instantly that he knows Eric can listen on the walkie-talkies, which I think is a pretty brilliant observation on his part.
He's genre savvy, what can we say? He knows exactly what they're going to do to him after 10 seasons.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time that Arjen's picked up on what the hidden part of the assignment is going to be. Because I think during the trail with the Japanese characters that they had to memorize, I think he picked up on that, didn't he?
He did. He was the person who spotted the kanji on the signs.
Yeah. And then we see Sen and Fritz run up to each other, and there's a whole lot of jockeying for different suitcases, and a lot of confusion ensues. And I can't help but notice there are a lot of people wearing face masks, and it's only 2010.
That's an East Asia thing, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It was the exact same when I was in Taiwan. There's so many people on the underground wearing face masks, and in Singapore actually.
And Sana and Arjen eventually run up to each other. Sana wants to dinner, but Fritz also wants to dinner. And Eric he ends up creating a chart of everything he's hearing. And then he said, well, it started well with all 4 of them. And then he realizes one specific person was messing around, but he never reveals who he thinks that one person is.
Yeah, do you think that Arjen's genre savviness here actually helped them all?
Yes, because all 4 of them would be in on intentionally deceiving Eric.
Because if they think that Eric isn't playing for money from the pot, but for an exemption instead, if he can correctly guess them, then people start messing around.
Yes, I think that's exactly what happened. Because Arjen didn't pick out that it was for money in the pot. He probably was thinking, oh, Eric is listening, and it's probably for an exemption.
Yeah, especially given that they've just come off the back of doing a non-elimination episode, which was the only non-elimination of the season, they know someone's going home. So the chance of someone being awarded an exemption in this episode is rather high.
Yep.
So Eric says that it's strange that nobody trusts each other with the Yokers. It's almost like two big betrayals have happened with advantages this season already. Looking at you, Sana and Fritz. And they then all write down what they want and meet up with Peter Yan and Eric. And as you said, he says that he had everything written down until someone started messing about. He predicts that Sana took the dinner. She takes the question mark. Fritz was predicted to take the question mark, and that is correct. Kim was predicted to take the Yokers, but she went empty. And Arjen was predicted to take nothing, but he takes the dinner. Peter Yan then badgers him to try and reveal who messed around, but he won't say it publicly. And Arjen picks Kim for the dinner, and Peter Yan says that Kim earned her empty suitcase. The irony, of course, is that the golden question mark, as with the theme of this season, would have given them absolutely nothing because nothing is what it seems.
Classic Vidum.
Yeah. This is the theme of the season, which is Nichts ist was het liked, which is now more associated with Vidum generally. But as I think I have mentioned in a previous episode, this is the first season that becomes kind of a mantra for the show. And then we get the pre-dinner scene, which I have compared in my notes to being like Summer Lovin' from Greece, as the boys and the girls separate and essentially just circle around each other.
Yeah.
Going, tell me more, tell me more. Sana tries to get Kim to memorize her information so she can answer every question with Sana's answers instead of her own and try and throw Arjen off. Arjen says that if he eats with Kim, he'll get information on Sana without it being obvious that he's onto her. And Eric and Fritz showing very knowing glance.
Yep.
At this point in the season, I think we are skirting around who the mole is far more than we have done in previous episodes, even though we've been terrible for it this entire season. But it's fair to say that Arjen was very much on the wrong track when he was suspecting Sana in this episode.
Yeah. And everyone knew he was on the wrong track. Let's not correct him.
Everyone apart from Arjen knew that Arjen was being set up for a fail here. And that's kind of what makes this episode so brutal.
And Peter Yan asked him with the empty suitcase, who do you want to exclude from the next assignment? She excludes, you guessed it, Fritz.
Because nothing is what it seems, and the suitcase isn't actually empty.
Which is kind of funny, because the suitcase is what they hid from Fritz. So the suitcase keeps screwing him over.
The suitcase giveth, and the suitcase taketh away. And she has to choose someone who'll try and earn the exemption with her, and she picks Arjen, and that means that Sana and Eric are going to be their opponents.
Yes. And then Fritz has no idea this has happened, so Peter Yan just goes up to Fritz and says, Fritz, someone decided you're out of the next game. And in probably one of my favorite gags of the whole season, Fritz just silently nods, he walks away, and we just get a bunch of cutaways to him throughout this next challenge of him just sitting by himself.
It's so mean. And it really made me laugh, especially at the end of the challenge where he's like, yeah, someone's just kind of sent me to a park for 5 hours.
Yeah. I'll just people watch in Tokyo. He was like a kid in an excessively long time out.
In more recent seasons, they would have sent him back to the hotel or something. But instead, they just send him to a random park in Tokyo and say, sit there for 5 hours.
Think about what you did 3 rounds ago.
Poor Fritz. I know we've said this in previous episodes, but I feel really bad for Fritz with how bullied he is by this group.
There's just no forgiveness. They're the exact opposite of Julie Black from Amazing Race Canada. There's no forgiveness.
And that joke, depending on when I release this episode, may age horribly.
Oh yeah, we weren't recording yet, so let me ruin the joke by explaining it. Julie Black in her bio for Amazing Race Canada 8 said, I guess it was one of her 3 traits, and one of her 3 traits that she's known for is forgiveness. So there you go. That's your Julia Black Amazing Race Canada connection to this episode of Vidum.
Yeah, it was her number 1 trait about herself was forgiveness.
Fritz would have been happy to be around Julie Black during this season. It's too bad she's not Dutch.
So, the group walks in, and Eric and Sana are immediately sent away, as is Fritz. Kim and Arjen have to disguise themselves using hats in a market, and they're both tall and blonde, so that is a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, the disguises don't really blend. It's why didn't they put on a fake mustache at least?
The irony of this is, of course, that in the end, Eric and Sana don't spot who it is. They don't spot the correct two people.
And all they did was just put on a hat in Tokyo where they'd really stand out.
The hats were not a problem in this challenge. It's Kim and Iron's lack of urgency, I suppose, is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, they didn't really hustle as much as you think they would for two people who could get an exemption.
Eric and Sana must follow a route through a market and reach the finish line within half an hour, as long as they know who is following them. Arjen and Kim must follow them point to point and reach the finish line no more than a minute later than they do. If they are not recognised in the end, then they will both earn an exemption and be in the final four. Eric finds the first envelope, and they get a bit of help to find the second one. Arjen and Kim lose them after 2 minutes. It was a disaster, and somehow they find them again after about 5 or 6. The next envelope then hides in an arcade. They talk about who the followers could be, and speculate that it could be a form of tag with Japanese people dressed as cops.
And we cut to Fritz sitting by himself while all of this excitement is going on. And at 23 minutes and 5 seconds of this episode, a kid sneaks up behind Sana just to mug for the camera. It is absolutely hilarious. I got the exact timestamp because it made me laugh so hard. It's like you're ruining the spy game, man.
In fact, my next note is it's delightfully interspersed with Fritz just looking lonely on a staircase.
I'm just waiting for somebody to sit next to him, and then Fritz goes, "Life is like a box of chocolates. Do you want to hear my life story? I miss Lieutenant Dan."
Sana then accuses Eric of messing around with the maps, and they go back on themselves, which causes Arjen and Kim to have to hide. And they have 8 minutes to reach the end point after picking up an envelope at a temple. And they say that they saw Kim run into the street, but Arjen and Kim didn't see them. With a minute left, they find Peter Yan and claim that Fritz and Kim are following them. Peter Yan rings the followers and gives them a minute to reach him. They run back to the temple, which then earns Kim and Arjen no exemption, and Eric and Sana nothing out of 2,000 euros for this challenge.
Everyone walks away as empty-handed as Fritz did.
Yeah. However, the absolute highlight of the episode and banner for this week is, of course, the reaction to Peter Yan saying that if they pick the followers incorrectly, they will win an exemption from Sana. Because Sana has a wonderfully over-the-top reaction to it. She is gobsmacked that there are 2 exemptions available and they aren't going to win them.
Yeah, I believe I have the exact quote here of, "An exemption? Why didn't we both get an exemption? We got here."
The picture of Sana looking gobsmacked could genuinely have a Brazzers logo put over it.
Oh, God.
And I think I may have mocked it up a few weeks ago. I will have to dig it out. But it does make me laugh every time I see that banner. So Arjen is vague with Fritz when he asks what the assignment was. Kim tells him, and also admits that she was in control of it. And he says that he had to sit in a park for 2 hours thinking about what he'd done. They then move hotels again, and Arjen pretends to play the self-playing piano. And then we see Kim and Arjen's intimate dinner. And Fritz thinks that Arjen picked her to make them think that he suspects her. He says, in a wonderfully hubristic way, that he's not worried about Fritz. He should be the next person to go. He's been on the same mole since episode 2 and doesn't want another competitor, someone who'll remember where everyone sits at lunch and beat him to the money in the end.
And Kim and Fritz have a hilarious conversation before this, where Kim tells Fritz that she was responsible for him not playing in the challenge, and he just says, "Well, why couldn't I play?" It just doesn't occur to him that it could be because of the chain gang mishap from several rounds ago. And then Arjen jumps in and says, "Fritz, did you have fun?" No. No, I did not have fun sitting outside on a concrete step in Tokyo for 5 hours while you guys got to do a challenge for money and 2 exemptions.
This is a wonderful episode for them burying Arjen with his suspicions and then burying Fritz with his sarcasm. It's brutal for both of them in different ways.
One great cultural touch they have, right after the self-playing piano bit, is when they're all in the conveni. Do you know what a conveni is in Japanese culture, Michael?
I do not, but it does sound like the sort of nickname Australians would give something.
So it just refers to a convenience store such as 7-Eleven or Lawson or like a Family Mart in Asia that's really popular in Japan. And people can do some grocery shopping here because they're a lot nicer than our convenience stores. So it's just referred to as a convenie.
Yeah, we don't really have 7-Elevens or anything like that in the UK.
And around Europe in general, I saw very, very few of them. But in Japan and Thailand, you see them everywhere.
Yeah, you see stuff like the Carrefour Express across from your Airbnb in Brussels, but you don't really see anything like a 7-Eleven.
Yeah, apparently 7-Eleven is Japanese owned.
I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, I learned that a few months ago because in Thailand, 7-Elevens are so frequent. I thought, is there some sort of Thai ownership with 7-Eleven here? But no, it's Japanese owned. So I thought, okay, that's why I see so many of them in Japan and Thailand specifically. For instance, when Jian and I did the bus ride from Bangkok to Phuket, the highway was just every couple hundred or a few hundred meters or so or a kilometer. You see a 7-Eleven. Drive a bit further, you're out in the middle of nowhere. Oh, there's another 7-Eleven.
So they wake up on day 13, and the mobile phone rings again while they're in the lobby. PTN asks for 3 loners who are good at non-verbal confrontation, and they pick Kim, Eric, and Sana. Fritz and Arjen then meet PTN at Shinjuku Station. He tells them that there are 3 webcams around the city, and the others will visit those webcams to try and communicate something to them, which will earn them 2,000 euros. The other 3 each receive an envelope containing 1,000 yen, part of a website address, and the location of their webcam, alongside a mobile phone where they can see their webcam. Kim appears on her camera and then goes to buy paper, as does Sana. And Kim, because there's nowhere else to buy paper, buys her paper from the Disney store. Eric uses boxes from the recycling instead, and sadly those do start blowing away. And I have to say, Sana's letters are surprisingly clear.
Yes, yes, they are.
Especially given the chaotic element of this challenge.
If this were an American episode of The Mole, I think the Disney store would have definitely been censored out.
Oh, 100%, unless Disney were paying for it. Mind you, it would have been on ABC, wouldn't it? So
Yeah, then they would definitely be included. Never mind.
they somehow get the website address and it gives them the instructions for the challenge, which is to make sure that everybody is at Flag Square on the southeast corner of Shinjuku Station by 2 p.m, and also gives them the phone numbers of the other 3 participants. Eric is the only person who doesn't answer. He doesn't hear the phone because he's too busy talking to locals. Kim and Sana then get a taxi together. Eric finally picks up after 4 attempts, and Fritz suspects that he was moling. And Arjen says that if Eric is the mole, he passed on luck last time as he suspected a woman, and then Eric passes the Disney store where Kim got her paper from.
I like how Eric didn't know Shinjuku Station, because I feel like that's the most famous metro station in the world.
It's certainly up there. I mean, I'd go for probably something like Times Square, or maybe something like Piccadilly Circus, but Shinjuku Station's definitely up there.
Yeah, in terms of the metro station itself, like being inside of it, that's the most famous one. And I like how Eric's like, what? Shin what now?
Shinhu now?
Hmm?
Shinjuku?
Shin Shoryuken?
And because Peter Yang can't be asked actually turning up, he appears on the screen at Shinjuku and tells Arjen and Fritz that they're too late, and as a result win absolutely nothing of 2,000 euros for the challenge, and absolutely nothing of 6,000 euros for the episode, and 11,400 of 54,200 for the season so far.
When Eric is riding the metro, I was amazed that the other camera operators could also fit on the metro with him.
Is it not very big?
Well, it's just usually quite crammed. The metro is, I mean, Shinjuku Station, all the metro lines, yes, there are always lots of cars to be in. But even then, they have people hired specifically just to shove people on and cram everybody in during rush hour.
Yeah, if you bear in mind that Tokyo's metropolitan area has about 2/3 of the population of the UK.
And more than the entire population of Canada. I think it's 40 million people for for Metro Tokyo now, if you include Yokohama.
38 wiki says.
Yeah, so about 40 million.
So it's now time for the test. 20 questions on the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows these goes home, except for the mole who can never go home. And the only person with an advantage is Arjen, who has 3 yokers. Eric says that it was very easy to make sure no money was earned in the follower assignment. They went for the exemption instead of money, so Arjen and Kim must have been moling. We believe that Arjen suspects Eric. Sana says her mole thought she took an empty suitcase, so she took one herself. She sometimes shows herself and makes sure that no money is won. We're led to believe that Kim suspects Sana, and Fritz says that nothing is what it seems. He's not sure anymore. It could be Arjen, Kim, or Sana, as all three of them do weird, illogical things.
Right at the end of the last challenge, I don't mean to, go too far back, but I still find it hilarious how the three of them teased Kim and Sana that there were just 30 seconds left in the challenge and just making them rush as much as possible. And then they're like, oh, 30 seconds. Oh, did we get in time? Oh, no, you were late by 15 minutes. It's just a joke. Or Eric claiming that his phone was on silent, and then Arjen's like, no, your phone, it's vibrating. It clearly was not on silent. How were you late by 6 minutes and missed 4 phone calls? It's like, well, at least I didn't open it upside down this round.
So PTN says they've only been in Tokyo for 36 hours, but whoever leaves today has got a very long way through the season, and he's proud of them. Kim, Fritz, and Sana all get green screens before Arjen gets the shock red one.
Jesus, man. That was one of the reactions.
Yeah, this was a big shock at the time because Arjen, as I have mentioned before, was the number one suspect of the Dutch public when he went home. He is also one of the more beloved people in this season, even before he became Dutch John Oliver. So it was a big old shock that Arjen gets a red screen here because he's a huge part of this season.
And not to mention that even if he isn't the mole, he's not going to go this round.
No, he got a green screen last round. Like, it doesn't make sense.
So there's just a lot of shocks and gasps from everybody. It's one of the biggest reactions to a late game elimination because you think, well, if you're not the mole, it's a 1 in 4 shot of you going home anyway. But everyone just thought, well, there's no way Arjen can go home. He was the green screen. He got a green screen. He was safe. He didn't really play his jokers. There's no reason for him why he would go. It doesn't sound like he's changed his suspect at all. It doesn't sound like anyone else has changed their suspect either.
It just doesn't make sense. Even 12 years later, they still haven't revealed who would have gone home if nobody had bought a green screen last episode. They don't reveal that in the reunion, which is weird. And interestingly as well, we don't know how close it was. We know from everyone else's suspicions that they were probably on the right lines. So Arjen going home here doesn't make sense given what we saw at the time 4 weeks before. One theory I have seen floated around is that no matter what, they were always going to give everyone a green screen last episode because they have to do the non-elimination. So Arjen probably still would have got a red screen. It's just that they had to show a green screen because they couldn't have someone go home before Tokyo.
Yeah, but it's just that's a really unethical thing to do, though.
Oh god, yeah.
Because you're just outright lying and manipulating the outcome.
They absolutely wouldn't do that sort of stuff now, but I have seen the theory floated around that that's the only thing that makes sense, is that did happen.
And then Arjen still had 2 jokers left because he probably figured he didn't have to play them. Those 2, he played 3. He played 3 of his jokers this round, right? 3 of his 5 jokers he played.
I didn't have any noted down that he played, but I had it noted down that he started with 3, so he might have played 1.
Might have just played 1. Okay.
Yeah.
So Arjen still had 2 jokers left. He played 3 of his 5 jokers and still went out. Why didn't he play all of them? Maybe he probably goes anyway.
I think, if I remember rightly, he didn't play any last round because he wanted to see whether he was on the right track, but he gave 1 to Fritz in exchange for information. So he started this episode with 3, and he played 1 in this test.
But he had 5. He started with 5, right? Oh, no, he didn't. Sana had 5.
Yeah, Sana had 5, he had 4. So he started with 4, gave 1 to Fritz last episode.
Had 3, played 1. Yes, that does make sense.
You can tell it's 5.5 weeks since we've watched episode 6. Started with 4, gave 1 to Fritz in exchange for information, didn't play any on that test. Started this test with 3 and played 1 this time and still had 2 left over.
Then Arjen is just left equally stunned. He says, I think it's not what I thought it was. I think I underestimated one of you. And then Peter Yan takes Arjen away. Peter Yan just bluntly says, in classic Peter Yan fashion, well, that was a slap in the face. And Arjen says, I respect someone else very much for what he or she did. And then Peter Yan says, well, you were wrong. And then Arjen responds, apparently.
It's a super awkward goodbye chat. Even by Peter Yan standards, it's super awkward.
Yeah, you were wrong, Arjen. Well, apparently I was, Peter Yan. Good observation, Dorothy Ann.
I think as soon as he gets that red screen, he realizes who the mole is and realizes how bad he's messed up.
Yeah. And the other four are all stuck there. Like, what the hell just happened? How did Arjen go after being safe with the same configuration of players? And it's the most confused we've seen the final four. It's not just a matter of, oh, everyone suspected Arjen and Arjen is gone. It's, what? How does he get eliminated as opposed to one of us?
Yeah, I'm sure Bindles will correct me on this, but I can't think of another time when we haven't found out at the end of the season who would have gone home in the case it wasn't a non-elimination.
Yeah.
This is the only time I can think of in mole history where they still haven't told us who would have gone home and who would have got a red screen, which makes it seem fishier than it probably is.
All I can think of too is that maybe Arjen also shifted who his suspect was during this episode, because when he has his dinner with Kim, I wrote down the whole paragraph of him just really overthinking things. I think, what was the one quote? I'm scared that Sanar Eric is also on Sanar Eric since today, and it's changed. That person is on you, Kim. So I want that person on you. I want Fritz out. At least he's confused and spreading so much. I'm not worried about Fritz. You're not my compare because you're also on Sanar and Eric. That's also been my mole since episode 2. But I don't want the others to know apart from Fritz because he's just another competitor. Just a lot of twists and turns into what he's thinking.
It's just a very odd outcome for this episode. Even though I've seen it 3-4 times at this point, it still kind of fries my brain a little bit every time I watch the ending of this episode and go, how is that even possible? So, next time, Tokyo Tower, Kim and Eric are right on schedule, Peter Yan interrogates them, and an assignment at an abandoned building sees our first finalist revealed. Have you got anything else you want to say?
Nope. The pot's at 11,400 euros. Once again, it was not a productive episode for them.
Which, by modern film standards, is pretty astronomically high, actually.
Yeah.
We've still got the price of Fritz hanging over them, but by modern film standards, they'd be quite satisfied with 11,400, I think.
Yes, and then it would all be donated to Rocky's charity.
Of course. So, thank you for listening to our Vista Mall 2010 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for another old mall in Japan. Don't forget you can contact us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, where we are RTV Warriors, or you can email us and contact at rtvwarriors.com. Logan's on Twitter at Logsubquarky, and I'm MJ Harmstone. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/rtvwarriors. Thank you as always to Marieke for the subtitles. We'll see you next week.
Peace out and just chill until the next flavoring.
So what did the mole do?
A lot.
Other than single-handedly fucking Arjen over.
Yeah, that was a lot of investment in manipulating Arjen this episode. And then the suitcase challenge, it's pretty clear that Eric figured out that Kim screwed this challenge up.
Yeah. I think it would have been very interesting to find out what would have happened if nobody had claimed the empty suitcase.
Maybe the golden question mark replaces the role of the empty suitcase?
Yeah, I don't know. Because apparently the golden question mark would have ended up being absolutely nothing, and the empty suitcase would have been the chance at an exemption, but it just doesn't make sense. Like a lot of things in this part of the season, it just doesn't make sense. But Kim actually does apologise to Arjen in the reunion for actively screwing him out of the game here, which she does.
Yeah, she really manipulates him in this episode.
Yeah, Kim is definitely coming into her own at this point in the season, I think is fair to say.
And no, because really she manipulates Arjen at every... The reason why she sabotages every challenge successfully is because of how much she manipulates Arjen. Because it's not just a suitcase challenge. Of course, Kim picks Arjen for the chase, and she manages to screw that up without him noticing.
Stop giving me PTSD about the chase. It re-aired last week.
Sorry.
That was a fun surprise.
And of course, Kim, I'm sure, made sure they screwed around at the temple a bit and didn't arrive on time. and then Kim would be completely unattended for the billboard challenge, so that she would arrive as late as possible. So the last challenge, when there's no one keeping tabs on her. It's a lot easier to sabotage in that scenario, and then she probably, I'm sure, was connected with production to know roughly when to show up to not be suspiciously late to the party.
Yeah. It's worth pointing that out as well. Obviously we talked a lot about what you've been up to in the past 5.5 weeks, but I was sat in the car park of my local Costco last Wednesday afternoon, and my phone started blowing up, and there's people going, "Oh my god, your Chase episode's repeating," and I think it was more of a vitriolic reaction to me this time than it was when it first aired. I got a lot of hate tweets.
Weird.
My favorite one was just 4 words: Michael is a nothing more. It's just those 4 words. And yeah, it was very entertaining. Anything else to say about Kim before we sign off for this episode?
uh, no, I think we just about covered it. Yeah, she played it perfectly this round. No money went into the pot. No, I mean, I guess she probably confirmed for Eric that she's the mole at this point. I think all of them are on. Eric, Son, and Fritz are now all officially on Kim 100%, right?
Yeah, all 4 of them. Well, all the final 3 contestants were definitely on Kim by the time that they all went home, respectively. It's a race to knowledge now, rather than a race to find out who the mole is.
I was thinking too, what's brilliant is that there's only one person who doesn't think she is the mole, and she uses that person to successfully sabotage every single challenge to ensure no money goes into the pot. That's pretty impressive when 3 other people know it's you, and they still can't do anything to stop you.
In the pantheon of good moles, I don't think Kim is talked about very often, and I know we're going to end up talking about this at the end of the season. But Kim plays this episode in particular masterfully.
Yeah.
It's a tour de force episode for her as a mole.
That's why it's so bizarre to see people, the Dutch people online say, "Oh, Kim is one of the worst moles ever." And I'm thinking, yeah, she doesn't start off the greatest in the first couple rounds, but by this point in the season, that was a master class on how to keep money out of the pot.
Yeah, she overplays her hand very early in the season, but by this point, 7 episodes in, she knows how to play with Arjen and knows how to get him to do everything she wants him to, and knows how to get that big shock reaction in the execution. So yeah, at the end of the season, we will obviously talk a lot more about Kim as a mole as a whole. But I think maybe not in the upper pantheon of moles, but I think she deserves a lot more credit than she gets.
Absolutely.